Hey, pretty good, thank you. How are you? Just on the last leg of a call. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Ah, technology. Yep. Let me know if I can help.
Thank you. I'm in. That's good.
Yay.
Absolutely fine.
Really good collection.
I wouldn't necessarily be jealous of them. But yeah.
Hey. Hi, Anton. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Justine. I am the Strategic Partnerships and Marketing Director at the L Factor Limited, where I work very closely with my mum, who is a award-winning business mentor. Separately, I am also a fractional marketing director, where I work very closely with startups, helping them get fundraising ready by telling the right commercial stories. So I've worked with B2B tech startups in heavily regulated industries across SaaS, health, HR, and CRM, where I help the business and the founders tell commercial stories and also figure out how to use AI. I'll pass on the baton to the next speaker.
Is that me or Miles next? I'm assuming it's me. It's gone quiet, hasn't it? So yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm Alec Harden Henry. So I run a business called StartUp Growth. I help B2B SaaS businesses to transition, particularly through that very tricky transition from founder-led sales to a scalable sales function, specifically focusing on how they can work on their strategy to take all of the great stuff that they're doing out of their head, to turn it into a process, document it, and then be in a really strong position to successfully hire their first new business support. So I'd call it perhaps a very cost-effective growth coordinator, taking those first steps from being a very founder-led business into something that can scale.
Thanks. My name is Miles Lewis. I've worked corporately for many years, joining AOL in 2001. Presently running my own consultancy, taking on board everything that everyone said, because I've had 2 exits, one to Apple with Shazam, and one to Napster, if you can remember the first streaming service, with Melody VR. And I've been through a number of the startups, scale-ups, and large holdcos. Yahoo was probably the biggest company I worked for a while. And I've taken all of that experience and presently working with smaller SMEs and working with a UK startup in the agri-tech world, as well as an e-commerce brand based in Brisbane in Australia. So I wanted to get out of the corporate world because I was working from 8 o'clock in the morning until midnight, and I ended up working from 8 o'clock in the morning till midnight because of Australia. That is me, and I'm open to any questions, really.
Well, thank you very much to all 3 of you. Really appreciate that. Before we start getting some questions in, by the way, for the audience that is already here, feel free to start dropping your questions in the chat. They can be on anything to do with growth, whether that's user acquisition, client, vendor, partner acquisition, growth hacks, go-to-marketing, partnerships, sales, marketing, advertising, and branding, and anything within that sphere. And for the others that are on the live streams, whether that's LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, please remember that we are unable to monitor your questions like that. So if you do have any, you'll need to join us immediately here on Microsoft Teams. It's audio only. And the quickest way to do that is to go to our website, startup2scaleup.club, click on today's session, which is Startup Growth Q&A 145. Click join. It's a quick registration. That gets you a link to your email, and through that link, you can join us here. But before we go to some questions, maybe if we can hear from the team, what would you say are your biggest do's and don'ts when it comes to early stage startups? If we can think of one each. Don't worry about repeating whatever you might have told us before, because founders, we do tend to make the same mistakes over and over again, quite often, unfortunately. So perhaps we can start with, I think Miles is unmuted, so maybe we can start with Miles, then Alec, then Justine, please. One do and one don't each.
Thanks, Anton. For me, it's very much being utterly focused on your ICP, and that's your ideal client partner, your ideal customer profile, whichever way you want to put it. It's very easy within a startup scenario to be 8 miles wide and 1 inch deep, and you can therefore end up chasing yourself around and around in circles. So, and it's all right to pivot. It's completely fine that if your ideal customer profile, your ideal customer is different in 2 weeks' time, but you know, and it probably won't be, but it's really, really important to be focused, because you don't have a huge team to rely on. You've got to do it all yourself, or with a small team around you, and that focus is critical as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks, Miles. Alec, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry, I had a notification saying that I couldn't unmute, but I seem to be able to now.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, great. So probably a couple of bits on the do, and then they're probably very similar on the converse side of the don't, because they're kind of the opposite. Echoing a little bit what Miles just said there. So when being very, very focused on your ICP, so 100% agree with that. You know, once you've gone niche, see if you can go niche again and get an even tighter profile. And importantly, and this there's a bit of a phrase, and I'm actually going to write a piece of content probably in a couple of weeks' time, which is stop selling and start solving. But to be able to solve, you need to understand what the problems that you have in your ideal customer profile, which is probably part of Miles' distinction. Your ideal customer profile probably has a lot of generic things like industry and business size and location, etc. But actually, what is the major problem that they've got that you can solve? And that turns your selling conversation into a solving conversation. So I know how to solve your problem. So that's probably one. And then the other area that I would say, I know you said one, but I'm going to do two anyway, is to try and find efficiencies wherever you can. So once you've started to go out to market and you're selling, I think before you try and hire someone to do it for you, maybe see if there's a little bit of automation you can do, or some shortcuts where you can start to build a process which stops you then having to try and hire and micromanage, etc. And then on the, like I say, on the flip side, it's probably opposite to what Miles said, and it's, you know, don't be scattergun. You can take business from lots of different target market. So it's not to say that if you've got a really tight ICP and someone comes along and wants to do business with you, that you can't take it. But what you shouldn't be doing is going out and spending your effort and time, and importantly, if you've got any money and budget, on trying to find people who don't really need something that you can help them with.
Oh, I guess it's my
Thank you
turn
very
now.
much. Yes, it is, Justine.
I'm going to do something a little different and share a struggle that I see quite often when my clients come to me, which is that when they think of growth, especially as a startup with limited resources, they tend to think about, oh, social media. I need to be on every single platform out there in order to make the most of the content that I have. But to throw a spanner into that trail of thought, I think that growth doesn't necessarily mean you have to be everywhere. I think that when we think about growth, the instinct is to show up everywhere. But just because you're visible doesn't mean that you're being effective. So instead, I would suggest not to chase vanity metrics, but double down where your audience is. Now, if you're an early stage startup, you might still be experimenting on that. And again, it's okay to pivot. But if you focus on one channel and think about a more evergreen content strategy, that way you can outperform half-baked posts in platforms where there's not much engagement. That's my 2 cents on that. Over to you, Anton.
Only if I had thinner thumbs, I think that would make my life much easier. But nevertheless, thank you very much to all three of you. Those are some amazing pointers that I hope our people here will look into. We've got some questions that were sent in, and I think I may need to remind those on the live streams one more time that unfortunately I am unable to monitor your questions there live. So if you do have any questions on growing your business to the next stage, whether that is user, vendor, partner, client acquisition, growth hacks, go-to-markets, partnerships, sales, marketing, advertising, or branding, then this is the place to be. We're going to be here for the next 42 minutes now. I've got 3 amazing growth experts with us, and for you to ask your questions, you need to join us on Microsoft Teams. Go to our site, startup2scaleup.club. Look for today's session, which is Startup Growth Q&A 145. Click join. It's a quick registration that gets you a link to your email, and via that link, you can then join us here. For those of you that are already here, just drop your question in the chat. We'll then give you the mic and you can ask the team. Unfortunately, I see this far too often where people are reluctant at first and then they leave it for last second and we run out of time. So we have to cut this off at exactly 1 p.m. We'll go to our first question. Okay, SaaS for SME accounting automation near London. They're at seed stage. And by the way, that question is in the chat, but I'll read it out loud for the live streams. Our accounting automation SaaS struggles to convince SMEs and accountants to switch from traditional systems. What go-to market strategies, such as industry-specific demos or phased onboarding for minimal disruption and ROI-driven case studies, could help us overcome resistance and accelerate adoption amongst this audience? So I guess in a nutshell, they have a new kid in the block and they want to know how to convince those that are using traditional systems. Perhaps we can start with Alec, then we can go to Justine and Miles, please. What would you do here?
Thanks, Anton. So I'm going to probably refer back to my previous comment, which is that what you've got to do is to find out the problem that you are solving in the market. So if you think the comment says struggles to convince SMEs and accountants to switch from traditional systems, and then the other one says faces resistance from chains that prefer familiar solutions. Well, what you really need to identify is what problem you're able to solve that they currently have in their current situation. And whether that's that they don't have a solution in place at all, they're doing everything manually, and that's a big problem for them, or whether they do have a solution in place, but it's not fit for purpose or perfect for the needs, find out why and what those problems are. And ultimately, what you've got to convince them of is that the current pain that they're going through because of their problem is less painful than switching and working with you. So my answer there is not very specific to those exact scenarios. It just takes it a level up and helps to try and simplify what you're actually trying to do. So again, figure out what the problem is that you're able to solve, and then go and explain how you can solve it and how their life will be much less painful and more utopian once they start working with you.
Thanks for that. Just
so this is a really classic scenario where if you're a seed stage, you probably have a battle, not about awareness, but trust, especially when the users that you want to acquire are very familiar with the traditional systems already. So usually from a content marketing perspective, what I would suggest is to use your active user base already, because that's probably a gold mine for you to get those case studies, get those testimonials that you need to build authority with. And then what I would suggest is looking into content that can speak to the frustrations of SMEs, for example, where if you're using a traditional system, you're most likely going to be doing manual entry points, you're going to possibly miss deadlines, and you might be worried about compliance because there are human errors. And also for a second phase, you might have accountants who are worried about client errors, inefficient workflows, and a lack of visibility. And then what you can do with those two main frustrations is think about content trends. So one case study could be a why your client's outdated system is hurting your firm's profitability. And then you can kind of showcase a cost-effective thing for time versus both the traditional method and using your method. You can then also look into more local ROI case studies, and maybe there is a client that you already have that you can work with to showcase London-based SMEs who cut reporting time or save costs, and be able to use those figures that they share with you into campaigns to say, oh, this person has cut month end by 60%, or this person has saved XK in processing costs. And the B2B playbook at the moment is to probably, again, create your own playbook where you could publish content such as how to switch systems without disrupting those client deadlines, or a 3-week rollout plan for your first 5 clients. I think that the main focus here is to use human-led proof, like video testimonials, use those case studies to really build that authority and really get people thinking, oh, actually, traditional is great, but with these guys, I can save so much more time. Who am I passing on to next? I think it's Miles.
Yeah, that's to me now. Thank you. I amplify both of that. I mean, I think in terms of identifying the problem and then having your USP is really critical. But Justine, you're absolutely right. It's that trust angle. You know, if half the problem here is traditional systems, then, or if the problem is traditional systems, then obviously trust is going to be a massive one. Whoever posted this has obviously got some ideas, because you've already said industry-specific demos and phased onboarding and ROI-driven case. So absolutely. I think a real critical part here is that it's been identified that over 20 people now make decisions. Now, SMEs probably isn't that many, but you've got to target more than the definitive person who's going to make the actual, yes, okay, we want to move ahead with this. And that is really critical in today's B2B marketing sphere, is the level of influence of people around businesses is far greater than it ever used to be. So taking on board the content marketing strategy, what is the strategy here in terms of your outreach, in terms of building that narrative and building that story? This is probably a 3 to 6 to even 9-month sales cycle, because that all comes down to what Justine said, is trust. And it's not just one person. You've got to make sure that you are attacking every decision maker within that business, even if you think they're not a decision maker. You know, there could just be users as well, because people could be asking different teams whether or not they're going to be using this system, and that could have an impact on the decision. So I think the most important part here is the absolute outreach, how you get the story across, the cadence and the amount of times that you can get your point across to a number of different people, and build that trust, and that is really critical. So amplifying what Alec and Justine said.
Yeah, thank you very much to all three of you. Really appreciate that. Right, yeah, we run about 19 events per month. And the reason we do this is that, unfortunately, over 90% of startups fail. The top 3 reasons for that are: 1, market fit; 2, running out of money; and 3, not having the right people. But guess what? When it comes down to it, there's only one barrier, or one guarantee for success, and that is your ability to sell enough products or services, or to get enough people to pay for your product or service. And that is all it comes down to. So that's why now, for the next 32 minutes left, we're going to take a few more questions. And if you would like to learn or get some ideas, or perhaps get unstuck on how to do this better, then drop your question in the chat now. If you're on the live streams, though, please be aware that unfortunately we are unable to monitor your questions there. So you'd have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. Quickest way to do that is go to our site, startuptoscaleup.club, look for today's session, which is Startup Growth Q&A 145. You click join. It's a quick registration that gets you a link to your email, and through that link you can join us here and then drop your question in the chat. There are no wrong questions and there's no need to be shy. It's a learning curve for us all. If, however, your questions are not on growth but on other matters, please then join us for the other sessions that we run. Mondays, talent; Tuesdays, product and tech; Wednesdays, as you can see today, it's growth; Thursdays, which is tomorrow, that's fundraising, so investment basically mainly. Second Friday of each month, it's UK startup law, and third Friday of each month, it's UK startup finances. Although this month we're going to do the finances Q&A on Friday this week, so that would be the fourth week. Anyway, you can RSVP to any future session via our website, and you can also join our WhatsApp community. That's groups of founders, investors, and operators. Top and bottom of our site, you'll see that WhatsApp icon. The second question we have today, it's from someone in Bristol. She's got a SaaS for retail workforce management. She's at seed stage, and she says, my situation is that retail chains are cautious about piloting new systems. Okay, that's a bit similar to the question above, I guess. So my question for you is, our workforce management SaaS faces resistance from retail chains that prefer familiar solutions? This is very simple. How can we design partnership offers that include risk-free pilots, shared insights on employee performance improvements, or exclusive access to early features, ensuring adoption by major UK retailers? Okay, so I guess the only difference here is that she's focusing on doing this through partnerships rather than just any means and any ways to do this. How about we start this with Justine, then Miles, then Alec. Justine, what would you do here?
So this is a really interesting situation because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that another underlying issue usually for this situation is most people already have a system in place which they are locked into with like a time constrained contract and such. So you're looking into, I guess, delay to deploy options, for example, and where you might be able to use that partnership to get suggest to the potential partner, oh, why don't you pilot just now? And then when you're ready, you can go live in Q4 without any pressure, because that way you'll get that time to be familiar with our system and you can see whether or not it might actually complement your tech stack rather than replace it. So that's, I guess, option number one. Option number two is to look into those contract-aware pilots. So this is where you know that someone might have a system in place and they can't renew for another 8 months. So your angle here might be to say, oh, start gathering performance insights now so that when you're ready, when renewal season hits, you already have an idea of who you want to transition to. So that way, when it's migration season, they'll already have you front of mind because of the partnership. And lastly, I would suggest looking at a more, I suppose, a pre-migration onboarding. So where you might create a content series for your potential partners or an onboarding offer, and you kind of use the headline, switching from ACE with readiness checklists or a migration roadmap or an ROI timeline that might match their renewal cycle that you might know or learn of through your partnership.
Thanks, Justine. I think that's absolutely right. And again, going back to, as you said, Anton, it's very, very similar to the first question. It's knowing who the stakeholders are, because I actually ran Shazam for brands for a while, and we were targeting retailers. This is before the QR code was big. We were launching the Shazam code to allow people to connect the physical to digital, and dealing with retailers was an utter nightmare. And then this was back in 2017, and I think ultimately we started to map the retailers who needed this physical to digital. So we did some our own research. So for here, this is very much a case of, is there, I don't know, is there a list of retailers that do not yet have workflow management? Is there any way of finding out? That could become a very, very warm leads list. But again, it's really finding out who the stakeholders are, and why this is important, what your USP is over others, you know, and making sure that there's a story here. And going back to mirroring what I was saying before, is that narrative of hitting these people with your content management and hitting them a number of times, because it takes time to build the trust for a new platform. And it takes time to build the story around why they should be thinking of moving, and that this is a 3, 6, 9, 12-month journey. So it's very, very similar to the accounting question, which I hope helps.
Thanks a lot, Miles. Last but not least, Alec, please.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with anything that's already been said. I would say one of the biggest challenges that I see, and I typically work with startups that are still relying on founder-led sales, which and don't therefore have a sales team in place, or even their first new business or sales hire. The biggest challenge I see when startups, or some of my clients have previously designed offers or sort of gone to market, is not doing the correct discovery up front. And when you're a startup, you don't have huge amounts of budget, and you don't have market research capabilities. So you really need a simple framework, and almost echoing exactly what Miles said there about understanding I call them the kind of pain points and problems, but Miles had a slightly different description for them, but it's kind of the same thing. Is using a sales methodology called BANT, and it's really simple. It's very easy to use, and it's budget, authority, need, and time. I don't think in this scenario, I think it's well, actually it does in this scenario. So do they have the budget to be able to work with you? And that's pretty easy to figure out before you've had a meeting with them. But once you've had a meeting with them, make sure that that's ticked off. Do they have the authority to make the decision, and are they, i.e. the right ideal customer profile within your target market? The very important part is need, i.e. do they actually need what you do? And that's where you're identifying the main problems and whether you can solve it. And then T out of BANT is timing. When do they actually need this? Which harks back to the first comment, which was around doing a pilot ahead of Q4, for example. So I think that's a really neat way of getting them to agree when they need this solution in place, and then working backwards to the pilot. So I think if you can, what I always tell startups is, don't send a proposal until you've ticked off B, A, N, and T, because otherwise you're just going to waste your time and end up being ghosted, etc. But in relation to this specific question, how can you design a partnership offer when you don't know exactly what the problems are, or the key stakeholders, as Miles mentioned, and when they need it? So I think if you kind of take a step back and make sure you're doing the right discovery up front, and understanding your target market, and understanding that you're talking to the right people and they need you, then actually building those partnership offers will be a lot simpler, because you should have the answers to what it is that this specific client really needs, and therefore you should focus on that. That was a bit of a sort of a long-winded roundabout way of answering the question, but hopefully some of the stuff in there was a little bit useful. Thanks.
And thank you very much, all three of you. I know I might be repeating a lot of the brilliant stuff that you mentioned, but what I do in this case, I would do some deeper research, go out there, find out what are, I don't know, the top 10 or top 100. It doesn't matter how many, but get a good number, find out what they are, and then see if you have an advantage to any of them. What is the advantage that you have to any of those systems, and focus on that, because as the team here have mentioned, it's about solving a problem, and it's about being extremely niche. Once you've done that, then go through that discovery that it was mentioned here. Maybe initially don't even start trying to sell to people, but make a list or find leads of pretty much every retailer you want to go to, and find a way to reach out to them and find out what system they use, and then find out what is it that that system lacks that yours has, and work through that. Then reach out, as Alec, for example, he mentioned about the decision makers, then reach out to them and explain what you're doing, and then say, I understand this system has this issue, is that right? How about trialing this stuff we have? That's one way. Another good way, because to me it seems like you may also not be 100% sure about your features. And a good way that I've seen, and I've done this myself as well, is you go out there and you reach out to whichever retailer and you say, Justine, I'm working on this, and as somebody with quite a background, this matter, I'd love to pick your brains, or your brain on what we're working on, and see if Justine or whoever that person is can give you some ideas on what is important to them. Once they've done that, and you can go back to them after a couple of months or whatever time it is and say, look, Justine, we spoke a couple of months ago. We actually built this with you in mind. How about you give it a try? And guess what? It won't be a cold sell anymore, but it will be quite a warm conversation, and more likely than not, they'll at least be willing to give it a try. And what your aim should be is that anybody who tries your system, it gives them more grief and more grievance and more BS to actually stop using it than carrying on using it. That would be my aim. Right, we've got 19 minutes. Let's go on to our next question. Or if anybody here wants to drop their questions, you're welcome to. It does make for better conversation if you can be bothered to join us live rather than send your questions. But nevertheless, this is Startup Growth Q&A 145, and we're here to help founders grow your business from zero to hero. There are no wrong questions, so please feel free to do that. Again, if you're on the live streams, whether that's LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, we're unable to monitor your questions there live, so you'll have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. Quickest way to do that is by our site, startuptoscaleup.club. Find today's session, which is Startup Growth Q&A 145. Click join, quick registration, and then you'll get an email with a link to join us on Microsoft Teams. So the question we have now, so I'm one of 3 co-founders of a seed stage sustainable grocery delivery in Bradford. Our sustainable grocery delivery platform struggles to convince users it's worth sticking with long term. How can we win our first 100 customers by creating a strong emotional connection through tools like impact trackers, showing the environmental benefits of their orders, curated product selections based on personal values, and a customer-driven rewards program? Oh man, this is a tough one. If you were here, we'd be able to ask, where are you focusing? You say sustainable, yes, that's fine, but I think you would need to be much more niche than that in order to get those 100 customers today. That's what I would do. I don't know whether it's some kind of ethnic food, or perhaps certain products, or certain lifestyle choices. but I would definitely not go this wide. Let's see what Miles, then Alec, then Justine got to say on this. What would you do here with what we know?
It's a good point. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. From the basics of there isn't much to unpack here. So, yeah, a lot. I would have a lot of questions if I could sit down with this person. I think ultimately, point number one, you're up against the behemoths. You know, obviously you're up against Tesco's and Deliveroo and so on. So I would absolutely focus on the localization and supporting the local economy, without a doubt. And whilst the environmental impact is growing in importance, a lot of people are very price sensitive when it comes to home delivery or delivery and delivery to your home or work. And price, unfortunately, is the driving force in this market. But you can very much fold that in to how you support the local economy and not big faceless organizations. But I think, Anton, you're right. I wouldn't necessarily hang my hat 100% on the sustainability bit. I think you mentioned, Anton, about products. I love that. I think, you know, if you can have a USP, but this goes back to exactly what Justine and Alec and I have been saying. It's what's the difference? What can you focus on as your business, as your product that has that USP in the market? Because it's really critical to hang your hat on that to a degree, because that's what will differentiate yourself in the market. So whether that's product led, whether that is something that's different purely in Bradford, but are there charities you can link yourself to? So it can be sustainable, but also by buying from us, you are supporting X in Bradford. So make it very local. It's the local conversation. It's the local business. But as I say, it's very hard to give very strong advice here on the basis that there's a lot of questions I would have, and I'm sure all of the panelists would have, to try and unpack this a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't have a massive experience in B2C. Most of my marketing and sales and advisory and career has been spent in B2B. So you can take my comments here with a pinch of salt as not massive experience in B2C, but I always advise clients to go as niche as they possibly can. And so, you know, it sounds like in this scenario, you're going to have quite a niche audience. So the question is, when you go that niche, are there enough people to make your business sustainable and profitable? And I'm going to sound like a broken record when I say you need to understand what problem it is or what solution you're offering for your quite niche customer profile. So is there a large enough target market who are very concerned about sustainability in their groceries and the delivery of their groceries, or are they more interested in the price? And is that where you're going to have to compete? Or you're going to have to compete on price, but then show that there's a better way of doing it, where it's not hurting the customer's pocket. And to do that, I'm going to reiterate what Anton said in his closing comments on the last question, which I really agreed with, is if you want to try and understand what your customers' problems are, then just ask them, which sounds incredibly simple because it really is. But most of the time we don't really reach out to our prospects and clients asking them for a bit of help and trying to understand them. And actually, when we do that, we get the answers to our questions so that we can align our business, but we also develop a relationship with those customers. Now, in the B2B world, you can have less customers who bring higher value. In the B2C world, that might be more challenging. So you might need to find some automated ways of doing that, which is difficult because everybody's sending surveys and questions and findings and so on in the B2C world. So that's my tuppence on this particular subject. But again, take it with a pinch of salt. I'm definitely B2B world.
Thank you very much, Alec. Last but not least, Justine, what would you do here?
So I am very intrigued by this question because I have worked with mission led startups in the B2C world, so no pressure for me. But I do agree with the panelists so far in that there are definitely a lot of external factors that need to be considered, because I imagine that once you are able to get your first 100 customers in Bradford, for example, how are you going to expand, especially if you're sustainable? Then I'm just thinking, is the van that you use to deliver also sustainable? Because that is a great starting point. So what I'd say is that with my mission-led hat on, so your customer-driven program is going to be very, very mission-led, because that is the type of audience you want to appeal to. Naturally, you're going to want to take them on a journey. And this journey, as I hinted, has to probably start from the first time those groceries go into that van. So the that first step is probably them feeling good and knowing the impact they've had for choosing your sustainable grocery business over a major supermarket. Now, just on the limited information here, from there, I would suggest, because your aim is to appeal to a particular group of people, I would then use your current customers, maybe create a story. Now, is the van eco-friendly? If so, mention that. Mention each emission that you have helped save versus what a supermarket brand emission might be putting out. So that's a great way to kind of get that initial shot from people and be like, oh, that sounds much better. So I'm going to go more local. Then you want to use that impact tracker that you mentioned, because you're on the right track there. And you want to use that data to show how much your customers have saved. Now, if you can find a way to create a visual asset that is shareable on social media, that would be even better. And that way you can tag all of the major sustainability brands, etc. And then you can get people to share that. Now, with the personal values curation, I'm not sure I know enough about that, but it sounds like they might be boxes of grocery goods that you might pack. So if that might be true, then you can, for example, share boxing videos. And then, for example, you can be like, oh, this person, they've chosen to shop with us. Here's a little boxing video of all the groceries that they've gone for. And this is the, forgive my ignorance, I'm not really sure what metrics it might be, but this is the carbon emissions they've saved by choosing us over a major supermarket brand. So with that in mind, and with the journey in mind, you then want to think about the rewards program that you mentioned. And then one possible way to align it might be, for example, this reward program has allowed you to unlock new sustainable products to try, or you can use this program to vote on future local suppliers, and that way you get that, for lack of a better word, you get that emotional stickiness that then kind of creates that excitement that that person did something really great by purchasing groceries from you. So that's very, of course, dependent on any external factors and such, but just based on this information, this would be the kind of journey that I would suggest.
Thank you very much for that. Just one last bit in terms of that nicheness. Again, I don't know if you have one, but if you don't, and I know this may seem like I'm being a bit too generalistic, but if I'm not mistaken, about a third of Bradfords are practicing Muslims. So what I would do maybe is come up with an idea to have halal food that is sustainable. And you definitely get 100 people, or you should be able to get 100 people that are loyal customers in Bradford. Or you could do it for vegetarians or vegans, or maybe you could do it for people that have diabetes, or whatever that niche is. But find that niche, because that way you spend less money in trying to research, you spend less money in trying to advertise it, you spend less money in trying to build and produce whatever foods or packaging that you have. Focus on that. Right, we now have 7 minutes to go. I'm not sure if we've got time for another question. Tell you what, we'll go for it if that's okay. Bear with me. This is a bit more mature, I think, than the ones we've had so far. So I'll just put that in the comments here, and the team can read it once I read it out loud for the live streams. Where is it? Okay, we're an eco-friendly cleaning products. Two co-founders of an eco-friendly cleaning products company based in Manchester, preparing for Series A. Our eco-friendly cleaning products have loyal users, but they rarely share their enthusiasm online. What strategies, such as creating branded shareable impact badges or hosting user-generated content competitions or spotlighting eco-conscious users in sustainability case studies, could encourage them to advocate for our brand on social platforms and beyond? Personally, I think competitions can go a long way, but they have to be substantial enough. That's what I would focus my time and money on this matter. But I'd love to hear from our team here. We've only got 6 minutes, so let's try and keep it to a minute each so that we have then time for parting words. Can we start with Alec, Justine, and then Miles, please?
So I'm going to keep it really short and sweet. B2C is definitely not my area of expertise, and this is really definitely in a B2C space. So I'm going to keep it short and save for 6 minutes and pass straight to Justine.
Thank you, Justine.
Gee, thanks. No pressure there, huh? I think that it's an interesting one, because here the challenge isn't retention, it's activation. I agree with Anton with the competition. That can definitely go a long way, especially if I'm going to go ahead and presume you might have a TikTok channel, for instance. But I'm thinking more with my campaign hat on. And so what I would suggest is running a impact proud campaign. So this way you can turn those private loyal customers into more prideful ones, and impact badges is a great idea. I would do perhaps a digital personalized impact badge, and maybe you can even use those QR codes on your products and get people scanning, and then they can perhaps get a reward each time they scan and share and tag you guys on social media. So that would be one way. Another way could be to do a challenge where it's a My Eco Clean hashtag challenge, where you might want to activate some user-generated content and get them to share routines and use those routines as stories. And that way you can also get some shareable content, and you can use the competition in the background of that to share some winners across the Instagram, TikTok, and possibly email channels as well, and get some relevant eco prizes, whether it's refills or maybe it could be I don't know, exclusive bundle or partner products and things like that. So those would be the two ideas I have off the top of my head.
Thanks, all. I would take a leaf out of Branson's book or Adam Parker's book, Ocean Saver, and that is very much becoming part of the brand itself, and making sure you're posting, because that will build a following, and that will build a story around you as the founders. Do look at Adam. Adam is amazing at how he's promoted Ocean Saver, and then he got listings at Tesco's, and the rest is history. Branson had nothing apart from one plane. He became the brand, and look where that took Virgin Group. So very much become the brand, build the story, post, but do look at what the competitors are doing. And my final thought here is, if these people are just unwilling to post, ask them why. Reach out and say, have you thought about a strapline for us? Have you thought about why you're not posting? Why aren't you posting? Can you help us? Can we need some support? Sometimes people love to be asked. They may not, they may ignore you, they may not, but out of a number of customers, you might get a nugget out of that, and people love being asked, not bombarded. Just ask their advice, ask their insights, and you may get people talking.
Thank you very much, Miles. We'll start again with the lady of the house, then Alec, then Miles, if you've got any quick parting words for us before I let you
go. So much pressure. I think that right now, one of the main challenges that I have as a content marketing strategist is the use of AI. So my parting words to you guys is this: think about the investment that you put in your branding, and do fact check any AI output that you use, and just ensure that the AI output has that subject matter expert in the workflow, so that they can sign off and make sure that it sounds like your brand.
Here, thank you very much for that, Alec.
Yeah, I would say whatever you're doing at startup stage, no matter size, but whether you've got no budget or limited budget or a little bit of budget, it's always going to be a bit of an issue. So whatever you're doing, keep it simple, repeatable, and scalable, and try to start with a human approach, and then try and use any automation that still makes it feel like it's remaining human, but allows you to be more efficient yourself. And then my final comment is that in the B2B space, every Friday I offer a free sales and marketing surgery to a B2B SaaS founder. So we'll just dissect a challenge or an issue that you have, and then come up with a plan that you can go away and solve your problem yourself. So there's links on my website and LinkedIn profile where you can go and book onto that if you've got a specific challenge that you would like a second set of eyes and ears on.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Miles, please.
I'm going to come at this from a very, very different way, and that is look after yourself. Take a break. Don't live this 24/7, because I reckon, and I believe fundamentally, a lot of startups fail because founders don't take a step back and think, go for a walk. And if you're having a problem, or you're reaching a point where you think it's not working, dissect it and try and work it out, because thinking is really, really critical. And if you carry on throwing yourself at problems without refreshing and taking that time out, even just 10 minutes, you are going to have problems. So please find time to think and take a break.
Brilliant stuff from all three of you, and I really appreciate your input and valuable time today. Huge thanks to everyone that tuned in, especially those that were here on Microsoft Teams, but also you that tuned into our live streams. Please remember next time to join us live on Microsoft Teams rather than any other platform that we're live streaming now. This was Startup Growth Q&A 145. We've got a few sessions that we run: Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising, second Friday of each month it's legal, third Friday of each month it's finances, although this month finances will be on the fourth week, i.e. this week, this Friday. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, and you can RSVP to any of them via our site, startuptoscaleup.club. When you're there, you might also want to join our community, our WhatsApp community. We've got groups of founders, investors, and operators that you can join. So please feel free to do that. As for my parting words, just remember the startup journey can be both exciting but also quite challenging. So try to have some fun in the meantime, and be kind to yourself, and as well as everyone else for that matter. Otherwise, we've got some amazing investors joining us tomorrow for Startup Fundraising Q&A. So hopefully we'll see you all there. Thank you and God bless. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks, Anton. All the best.